I'm a girl on fire, I'm not a victim. A girl on fire, I'll stand my ground. Girl on fire, I've made a choice, I stand proud. I'm a girl on fire. I'm a mother, a daughter, a sister, a friend. I'm every woman. I have taken up arms and I choose to defend all that.
Daniélle Oxley here for Touch Act Tactical TV and Ghost of Girls on Fire, 16 days of action for no violence against women and children. We're here with the beautiful Daniélle Hayward. Am I saying that correct, Daniélle? Daniélle is a domestic violence activist. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Where do you come from and what brought you to this specific point?
Firstly, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. So, like she said, my name is Daniélle Hayward. I am a domestic violence activist. So, how I got into domestic violence is I used to be, when I still was a law student, I used to volunteer at a non-profit organization called Silent Rights SA. And I realized that so many of these women specifically do not know their basic human rights. And the problem is, most of these women were also going through domestic violence. So they stayed in very toxic relationships, marriages, because they believed all of these lies that their abusers told them. And they didn't even know how to get a protection order. And that was something that really made me sad and angry. And so I decided to start Justice in Heels, which is a podcast and a brand committed to educating South Africans on the law. And I like to focus on domestic violence a lot.
Okay, Justice in Heels. Is that an ongoing podcast that you're still involved with?
Yes, so I recently released the last episode for season 3 of the podcast, and I plan on having season 4 in 2025.
Fantastic. What topics do you cover in these podcasts?
Sure. So mostly family law related topics, because I find that a lot of our listeners, like I said, really do not have any access to legal information. And so it's mostly topics like child maintenance, how to get a protection order, how to get a divorce in South Africa, forfeiture of assets in divorce, and then there's a few other topics like intellectual property law for those who may be business owners.
So, to get a protection order, I have got a little bit of experience from somebody that we helped with a protection order. Is it really worth the paper that it's written on?
Sure. I would
Does
say
it work?
yes. I would say, look, I mean, like you say, it's a piece of paper. So, if you really have someone that, let's say it's a partner or somebody that's abusing you and you are so afraid, then a piece of paper is not always going to stop them. But at least it can give you a little bit of hope. And sometimes I get a lot of people who get their protection orders and then they don't really have any problems from there, because the person actually, the abuser actually realizes, listen, this person is not just going to stand back and take the abuse that I am aiming towards them. And yeah, but I mean, there are a few very sad stories where protection orders did not really help. But I would definitely say get a protection order if you are in a situation where you are being abused.
How easy is it to get a protection order? Because it's, as I said, I've gone through this process and it depends on the police station, it depends on where you do it, etc., etc. So how easy it is, what's the process like?
So if I can share a story. So I was at the domestic violence court in Johannesburg a few months ago, and that was really like one of the worst days of my life, because there was this lady that was sitting there, quite an older lady, I think she's in her 50s, and she was so beaten and bruised, and she was sitting there waiting to get a protection order, and I was there with a client, and she actually just left because nobody helped her. So the thing is, it's easy to get a protection order if you know what to do. But unfortunately, we live in South Africa, so it's not that easy. because you have court staff that doesn't really want to assist you. But most of the time it's very easy. So the only thing you do is you print out the documents if you have access to a printer beforehand, and then you can already complete the form. You can submit all of your information and proof that you have of this abuse, and you go to court, and the magistrate will then look at everything that you provided, and they will then decide if they give you what's called an interim protection order. So getting the interim protection order is relatively easy. There's not a lot of cases where they do not, issue an interim protection order. But the problem is there's a lot of trauma for these victims of abuse because they need to go back to court on the return date, and most of the time they need to face their abuser if they show up on the day. So it's easy, but it is a very long process. It is not something that just happens in, let's say, a few weeks' time.
Okay. You talk about a holistic approach to domestic violence. What do you mean by that?
So it's nice if everybody knows their legal rights, and it's very nice if the law can assist these victims to get protection orders. But the problem is that's not where it ends. You still have these emotional wounds that need to heal. And this is also something that I see a lot. So there's a lot of, especially ladies, who tend to come out of a very abusive and toxic relationship or marriage, and then a month or two later they're already in a new relationship. Yeah.
And it's probably the same type of person that they've gone for before.
100%. So I even had a family member who did the exact same thing. Like, she got divorced, and then 2 months later she was already in a very serious relationship.
Should we go back to the same person again?
Yeah.
That's exactly what happened with one of somebody that I knew, or that we knew, and we helped her to get a protection order, and she's back with the abuser. And unfortunately, it's going to happen again.
I heard a statistic that said that most women go back to the abuser 7 times before they leave.
Yeah.
So that's very shocking. But yeah, so they go back and they make these mistakes again. They go for the same type of people. They don't heal. They don't better their self-esteem. And then it just happens again, and it just keeps on repeating and repeating and repeating the entire time.
Tell me a little bit about your ebook, and what is it called, and where can people look for it?
So my ebook is called I Did, But I'm Done, Your Complete South African Divorce Guide. So in this book, I try to focus not only on the legal aspects on getting a divorce and getting a protection order if you are in a marriage that is abusive, but also on the emotional aspect. So how to make time for yourself, how to make time for self-care, how to tell your parents, how to tell your children, how to tell everybody that you are getting a divorce. And yeah, so that was, I tried to focus on the legal, the emotional, and
So the holistic approach.
Yeah, exactly, again, the holistic approach. Yeah.
Okay, so what have you got planned for the future except for the podcast in 2025?
For now, I really hope to get involved in domestic violence campaigns on a bigger front. So I would love to start helping these victims at court, like going to court every now and then and just helping them fill out their forms. Because again, in South Africa, we live in a country where a lot of people can't even read and write. So for them to now have to complete this, protection order form, it's very, very overwhelming for them. So that's what I plan on doing.
It is definitely something that needs to be done. I think a couple of years ago for the 16 Days of Action, I interviewed a lady, and she's probably one of the saddest people that I've interviewed ever, because there was no hope for her. She was gang raped, quite a well-known case, and she can't have children, and the guys have been released. And I looked at when I spoke to her, everything was just dark, and there was no positive moving forward. She was never going to change. And that, I think, was probably one of my saddest interviews ever, because I knew there was not a closure. There was no closure. So I think you also deal with a lot of those cases, which is emotionally quite tiring.
It is. It is very tiring. Yeah.
So Daniélle, tell us a little bit in terms of your podcast, which of the topics that you covered is probably the most unusual or something that would make a difference to people?
So I did an episode with Jennifer Scholes, who is one of the top family law attorneys in South Africa. And we talked about Rule 43 applications, and some of the people may know it as a Rule 58 application. So it's an application for interim maintenance. And this topic is so important because there's a lot of people going through divorce. Maybe you were a stay-at-home wife or husband, and now you are divorcing, and the spouse who is the breadwinner cut you off because you want a divorce, so why should they pay for you? Then that application helps you to get interim maintenance while the divorce is ongoing.
If you have a message for ladies during the 16 days of action, we've changed it from activism to action because activism does not make a difference. You need to have action. What would that be?
That there's always hope. You know, if you are in a situation where you feel like you are super overwhelmed, you can't get out of this, reach out. There are a lot of people, if you don't have family and friends who care, there's definitely organizations that will be willing to assist you.
Thank you very much. Is there anything that you would like to add that I have missed?
No, I think you covered everything.
Fantastic, and thank you very much for making the time, and I'm sure we'll see each other in the future.
I really hope so. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Danielle.
I'm not a victim, a girl on fire. I'll stand my ground, girl on fire. I've made a choice, I stand proud. I'm a girl on fire. Countless hours on the range, I am responsibly armed. I am your equal. I've empowered myself, I have practiced and trained. Fear won't control me. With my sisters in arms, we will make ourselves heard. We'll stand together. I'm a girl on fire. I'm not a victim, a girl on fire. I'll stand my ground, girl on fire. I've made a choice, I stand proud. I'm a girl on fire. We're girls on fire. We're not victims, we're girls on fire. We'll stand our ground, girls on fire. We've made a choice, we stand proud. We're girls on fire.